I've got the best 10 knives for a $300 budget, and today we're going to be starting off with the Bowie knife Marble Fade. Now, it's not going to be the most glamorous knife, let's be completely honest. The Bowie knife is probably not your #1 choice, and if it is, you're probably going to be going for the most expensive finish because it's not too expensive. But what we're talking about in this video, we've got two options. We've got a really good looking finish or a really good looking knife, and honestly, the Marble Fade is one of my personal favorites. I think the Marble Fade shines in the light, but it's also got a very good, clean look that I definitely think a lot of people are looking at over a $290 price point. It's a perfect category for something that's going to be extremely expensive looking, but it's not going to break the bank, and I think that's exactly why the Bowie knife Marble Fade should take into consideration for your next knife. Skin Swap is today's sponsor, and they're also sponsoring you with the top link in the description. They're here to cater to all of your CS2 and Rust skins need, as they're the top place for buying on some brand new skins, selling off your old skins, or trading your new CS2 skins for some new ones as well. They've got everything, and transactions are taking under 30 seconds right now. They also offer the most competitive rate out there as a massive 40% deposit bonus if you just top up today, and their selling feature is one of the best. With an instant cash out and many different payout options, there's no reason not to try them out today. Now, if you're looking for a little bit classier on the knife, I'm definitely going to check out these Bayonet. Specifically, the Bayonet Black Laminate in minimal wear is something that I think comes in a really undervalued price point at the moment. It's currently around $290-ish. Obviously, all of these are ranging. These are cash prices, by the way, but the truth is, I definitely think this is going to be one that looks, once again, more expensive than it actually is. Bayonets are usually thought of as really high-end knives, and the Black Laminate always seems like it's a really expensive finish because that factory new is extremely expensive. But looking at the minimal wear, you're going to be able to grab it at a really reasonable price point, and it looks very similar to the factory new, which is extremely perfect when we're talking about knives that look a little bit undervalued here. Number 3 is going to be the Stiletto Damascus steel, coming in at around that $290 price point once again. Now for this one, I'm definitely going to say I'm throwing it in for some diversity. We can't have all of the same knives. Although the Stiletto is not my personal favorite, I know there's a very niche amount of people that are really in love with the Stiletto. Damascus steel is one of my favorite finishes at a really budget price point. Coming in minimal wear, it's not going to have any scratches or scars, and you're going to be able to get a really solid looking knife if you're a fan of the Stiletto, and it's going to be a relatively average price point. I think it's a decent looking knife, although the Stiletto's not my favorite. There's people that like it, and I think this might be the knife for you. Number 4, I think is just such an iconic knife. It's going to be the Flip Knife Blue Steel in factory new, coming in at around $285. For me personally, flip knives are one of the top tier knives that are, if you're really on a budget, I think they're perfect. Plus, the Blue Steel has always been one of my personal favorites. I don't know why. It's one of the first knives I had. I think the Blue Steel is a really good looking mid to upper tier finish, and I definitely think it's one that can come at a relatively decent sized budget as well. $285 for a flip knife is on the cheaper end. The Blue Steel looks really clean. It's not going to be one that's going to be showing any blemishes or scars because it's in factory new. I think it's got everything you're looking for if you're a fan of the Blue Steel and the flip knife. This is definitely right up your alley. Heading on over to our shattered web knives. Number 5 is going to be that Ursus Slaughter in minimal wear. Now, the Slaughter is a really high tier finish in my personal opinion. I think Slaughter is definitely when we fall into this category of high tier finishes on not so great knives. This could be it, but I think the Ursus knife overall is actually one of the more decent knives as well. Therefore, you're getting a really solid finish on a really solid knife. Maybe you're not a fan of the Ursus, but anyways, Slaughter in minimal wear, who can pass that up? For a $280 price point coming in at a cash price, I definitely think this is going to be one that you should highly check out. I love the Ursus knife. I love the Slaughter. I think it's a great pairing together, and it looks really solid because of how thick that blade is. You're going to be able to grab yourself a solid price point here as well. Number 6 is going to be a little bit of a different category. This is going to be all of your Dopplers and Gamma Dopplers. These are going to be really good budget options. Unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with some pretty low tier knives. Most likely, you're going to be stuck with a gut knife or a Navaja. You might be able to sneak your way to a Falchion if you're looking a little bit above $300, but unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with a gut knife or a Navaja, like I mentioned, most likely if you're under that $300 price point. I still think these are really good knives. They're going to be on the cheaper end here, usually sitting around that $200-ish price point. I think they're solid, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, these are not the knives people are really desiring at this much money, but it's always an option if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper or if you really want these finishes. If you're looking for more on the expensive knife section, we've got this one right for you. It's the Talon knife Urban Mask, coming in minimal wear at a $270 price point. Now, when we're talking about the Talon knives, these are going to be one of the more expensive knives out there. Very similar to a Karambit. Obviously, a Karambit is extremely expensive. We can't even throw it on this list, but the Urban Mask is not an absolutely terrible finish in my personal opinion, especially in a minimal wear. You're going to be coming in with a knife that looks decent and probably a little bit more expensive than it actually is, but not by too much. A lot of people are looking at the finish when they're talking about expensive knives. Talon knife is a great overall knife for a lot of people, but the Urban Mask is probably going to throw a lot of people off from this one specifically. But if you're a fan, I definitely think it's right up your alley, and it's going to be a perfect option for you. Now, if you weren't satisfied earlier with the Black Laminate on the Bayonet, I definitely think the Knight is going to be the finish for you. Personally, the Knight is one of my favorite finishes when you can get a low enough float on it, and when we're talking about minimal wear on the Bayonet, there's a very high likelihood you're going to be able to find a pretty good looking knife for not too expensive. Coming in at around a $270 price point, this is exactly what most people are looking for. You can find a low float one, a little bit of a snipe here or there. It's going to be absolutely perfect, but even so, a 0.13 is not going to be absolutely abysmal. I think the Knight is a perfect finish on the Bayonet. Now for me, I'm a big fan of the Shattered Web Knives, and the Paracord Slaughter is going to be one that's absolutely perfect in the current format. $260 is a really solid price point, and we're looking at something that's as solid as the Slaughter finish. I think it's really hard to pass up on the Paracord knife. The Paracord knife is not one that's super expensive, but it's also one that's not super common as well. I think people are going to be undervaluing it a little bit, and therefore in the current market, I think it's a really optimal play. Similar to what we talked about earlier with the Doppler and the Gamma Doppler, the Fade is also going to be a very similar option here. If you're looking for something that's extremely high end when we're talking about the finish, but your knives are probably not going to be the most ideal, the Fade is perfect for you. Unfortunately, you're probably going to end up with a gut knife or a Navaja once again. You might be able to squeak out a couple other knives for a very slightly elevated price point, but I think it's once again a decent option if you're looking for something that's extremely solid for the finish, but your knife is going to be a little bit lackluster. Just because I feel bad I didn't throw a Falchion knife on here, the Falchion knife Slaughter is also coming in at $265. It's a very solid looking finish. I'm not a big fan of the Falchion knife. I think it's been overused. It's way too old. It's just not personally what I'm looking for, but if you are, it's only a cheap $265 and therefore it makes itself a very attractive option. Finally then, we obviously have some tiger tooth knives. Now personally, I threw the Ursus knife here for the tiger tooth, but you've got a lot of different options if you're looking for under $300. I think this is a perfect, great budget option. If you're looking for something that looks clean, it's not going to be too expensive, and at the end of the day, it's probably going to appreciate in value more than the decent amount of these just because it's so common, so popular, and everyone loves a good tiger tooth, and therefore it makes itself very attractive in the current moment. Now talking about how you can make a profit off of these knives, there's two different things. First up, we're going to be talking about what to avoid. The biggest thing is going to be battle scarred and well-worn knives. These are a complete no-no. These are not touched. Do not do anything with these. Even though it might seem like it's attractive finish in a battle scarred or well-worn, they are not going to appreciate well. These are usually people's last resort for knives, and people that unbox them immediately sell them because they don't appreciate in value anywhere close to what you're going to get for even a field tested or a factory new. I will also say personally, I think you should really avoid looking for a good knife with a really bad finish. The Talon knife Urban Mass Minimal Wear is the only one I threw on this list for this specific reason. People look for the finishes when they're talking about what they want to make profit on and what people want to play with, but everything, they're looking for a good finish. They're not looking for the knife as much. This is why we see a lot of knives appreciate 100% and some only appreciate 25. It's this exact reason. Therefore, you're going to want to completely avoid anything that's a really good knife with a really bad looking finish because it's going to ruin that knife. Talking about my big 3 tips for going ahead and making profit off of your knife, hopefully turning it into an investment. Number 1 is going to be good price. We're looking at around $200 to $300. These are going to be the price point that a lot of people are looking at. We don't want to get too expensive because we're going to be pricing people out. Number 2 is going to be a good finish. We want something that's going to be desirable, something that people are going to want in the game and they're going to be wanting to see on their screen. Number 3 is going to be a good knife. No Navaja, no gut knife, obviously, because those are going to be super common and a lot of people just don't really prefer them. We're looking for something that's going to have a decent sized market around it. That's all I got with you guys. So much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.